Well, hello, I'm David Gale, and welcome to ACTRA Spotlight, where we're building the Canadian star system one podcast at a time. Peter Keleghan has the face, voice, and hair of a man with great authority and has built an enviable career playing the fool. As you will hear, nothing is farther from the truth. Whether it's initiating ACTRA's credit union or lobbying for artists in Ottawa, this ACTRA Award of Excellence recipient spins a great yarn and is nobody's fool. Enjoy. There's no, the theme is, as
Actors.
I said, yeah, actor.
Building the star system.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And we can definitely talk about that. Certainly, the star system. Yeah.
Yeah. How's it going so far?
Well, you tell me. What do you think? What do you think?
Well, I tell you, the story that did I ever tell you the story when ACTRA was in Ottawa and we were doing the
Lobbying?
The lobbying. We were around the peace flame and we were just about to take a picture, and it was me and Gordon and a bunch of other people.
Gordon Pinsent?
Gordon Pinsent, and you were there, and Carl was there, and Sue Milling was there. And we were just sort of waiting for the photographer to do his thing, and there was a woman on the other side of the peace flame, and she looked over at me and she sort of waved and said hi. And Gordon is always razzing me because whenever I'm with him, it's always total eclipse of the son-in-law.
Total eclipse of the son-in-law. That is brilliant.
Yeah. It's always, and what do you do? And of course, Leah goes through that too. Anyway, so Gordon looks over at me and says, "Oh, you see, you got a fan. She recognizes you." So she makes her way over and she said, "Oh, Mr. Keleghan, I don't mean to bother you, but I really enjoy your work and your shows." And I said, "Oh, well, thank you very much." And I'm looking at Gordon, sort of smiling at me, and I said, "But you do know Gordon Pinsent is standing right there." And she said, "Oh, yes," completely seriously. "I'm just working my way up." So the good news is there is a star system. The bad news is it's only one or two of us.
Yeah, it exists in your family.
It exists in my, well, yeah, one of them certainly does.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But there's always that litmus test of going outside of us to test us. It's kind of a colonial way of thinking. Before being tested in America, you were tested in England, and if you could make it in England, you were a valid Canadian. And now we have to go down to the Olympics, that is Hollywood, and if you're tested and proven there, then you're wanted back here. So there's some benefits to it. It's a more socialist way of thinking that everybody is in the same boat. We all have the same Medicare, and my son is also an actor, and my uncle used to do theater, and all this kind of stuff. But the bad news is we don't celebrate success as much as we probably should. We love our athletes. We love a lot of other successful Canadians like Wayne Gretzky and Roberta Bondar, and there's a lot of Celine Dion.
Yeah.
But there again, she made it outside the country.
So we've started with this. You did go down to the States for a little while.
Yeah.
And what was the impetus to go down there?
Well, like everything else, it was the Olympics. It was the big time. It was.
Not the actual Olympics, because you weren't.
Well, the Olympics of acting.
Oh, of acting, yes, which happens all the times in L.A.
Yes, exactly. It's a 365 event down there. So if you go down there and you start working and you keep working, chances are you're going to end up very wealthy and be able to choose your own projects from the second or third one on.
And you went down there and you did Cheers and you did Murphy Brown and you did General Hospital and you did Seinfeld.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Seinfeld was the biggest break in the States?
It's certainly the best known of all the shows I've done. Then there was the catastrophe of me not being able to get a work permit in time to do the second episode, and so it was another guy, Matt McCoy, that took over my role, but they were incredibly kind about it. I was scrambling around, faxing the Prime Minister and doing whatever I could to say, hey, wait a minute, this is not fair. I did one episode. I should be able to get back down there to do the second episode, even though I only had a week processing time. It could not be done. At this point, it could not be done. And Castle Rock even called my immigration lawyer right after I got off the phone with him, and he told him the same story. No, we can't do it. In retrospect, if I had told him I didn't have a problem, I had a social security number, and I could do the job, and then once the visa came through, I could be paid. But I didn't think of this. I told them up front.
You were just an honest Canadian.
Just an honest Canadian, you see, and it just worked against me. So they were very kind. They waited until the day they were doing the casting session, and they called and said, Mark Hirschfeld was the casting director. Is there any way you can do this? And I said, no, sorry. I tried everything.
Did you meet the guy ever? The guy who replaced you?
No, I don't think I've ever met him.
And do you remember who the prime minister was at the time that you
Chrétien.
Chrétien was.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you get something back from him at all?
Probably a couple of weeks later. Even though the top of my fax said urgent, urgent.
I'm sure he never got any faxes that said urgent, urgent on them.
Yeah, well.
2 urgents.
Yeah.
So Peter Keleghan, first of all, I did hear an interview with you not that long ago where the interviewer kept on saying Peter Keleghan multiple times, and I thought it was very decent of you not to correct them.
No, that is the correct way of saying it.
It's Keleghan?
Yeah.
Come on.
If you were to pronounce it correctly, if you were to pronounce it the way the Irish pronounce it, it's Keleghan.
How do you pronounce it?
Callahan.
Because you're
because
not
everybody
Irish?
else does.
Because you're not Irish?
It's also not my legal name.
Oh, are you allowed to get into that?
Well, I don't know. Am I?
Sure.
It's your
sure.
show.
No. It's our show.
Okay. Well, yeah. No, my legal name is Krakus.
Krakus?
Krakus, which is a very Polish name.
And is it actually pronounced Krikus, but we just say Krakus because we're not Polish?
Krakus.
Krakus.
Yeah. No, my father. It's a bit of a story, but he went through the war, and it was taken away from his family in 1939. In 1945, he didn't know his family was still alive. He was adopted by the Polish. Was it the Polish cadets in exile in England, something like that? Brought over to England and eventually adopted by another family. I think he was 16 when the war ended in 1945. Didn't know if his family was alive. The Red Cross eventually found them. And they told him in no uncertain terms, do not come back, because now that it was behind the Iron Curtain, he could be questioned. Have anybody that was in the West was questioned relentlessly and watched and sometimes assassinated. Anyway, so he stayed in England, and when he was in England, a lot of the soldiers were coming back to their jobs, and when you had a foreign name, he was ostracized because he was a foreigner, and they would say, bloody foreigner taking the jobs, get out of our country. And much like it is today, I guess, it just never stops. Anyway, so when I was finally getting into the business of acting, he said, Peter, you should take a more Anglo-Saxon name. So I chose my mother's maiden name, so there's Keleghan. It doesn't really apply anymore, especially in this country.
No,
multiculturalism, it's celebrated more than anything else, which is wonderful. But, there's Jane Krasinski and all of it. Just John Cougar, Mellencamp, and he wants to go back to Mellencamp. So I'm not going to go back, but I'm just going to. It runs consecutively. I'm what's the word? I'm a dual citizen of my own world.
And you're not alone in that. And you're actually connected to the Keleghan name. Mm-hmm. So that's it's not just out of a hat or my name also was changed, but not by me, but my father. When my grandmother wanted my father to be the Chief Justice of Canada, and she didn't think that the name Galsky would fly back in the 50s, so they changed it to Gale. Yes. So my father became Hartley Philip Gale.
Hartley Philip Gale.
Yes. Yeah, which is a very Anglo-sounding name.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So
it sounds Chief Justice-y.
Doesn't it sound it? And then he never did that.
No?
No. But that's another story.
So he went back to Galsky.
No. He stayed Galsky. Okay. No, he stayed Gale. He stayed Gale. So this is funny. I did a little research, and in a Toronto Star article about you was titled "Peter Keleghan Smarter Than He Acts."
Yeah.
Now, when did that start? When did you start getting cast?
Well, certainly with the Newsroom.
The Newsroom was the beginning of it?
I would think, because Jim Wolcott, the character I played in the Newsroom, the original Newsroom, not the Sorkin Newsroom.
Right.
The Ken Finkelman Newsroom.
Right. I'm familiar with it.
You are. So my character, Jim Wolcott, was just profoundly stupid. Profoundly stupid. He had very limited means in the upstairs department. So, I think that's where it started, and I think that what I strove to do in that show with that character was to try to make it look plausible that this guy would have elevated to the position that he was in, which, the stereotypes were all around me. Mary Tyler Moore and Ted Knight and all of the other ones, the dumb anchorman, were all there. But somehow I wanted to give it a little bit of a boost by somehow believing that, well, for instance, a woman's choice, that I thought this woman said, a woman's choice should be between the woman, her doctor, and her dog. And, of course, I get reproached by this by Ken, the executive producer of the fictitious show, and he said, "You thought she said dog?" Obviously, she would say, "I thought she said dog, not God. I didn't hear." So I wanted in that character to suspend people's belief that I actually could have. I wanted to make it as real as I possibly could. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where the playing dumb seriously came from. I think if I have a strength, it's probably playing dumb intelligently or something, or
right.
straight. That I would possibly make people believe that I could be that dumb, and then, 4 or 5 seconds later, that they would look back and say, "Did he really say that?" And if they do that, then I've done my job.
Was there an actual anchor that you might have been?
No, it was an amalgamation of Mansbridge. Mm-hmm. So I saw Mansbridge in the elevator once, and he had wingtip shoes, so I got some wingtip shoes and a bit of the attitude, I think. There was another guy named Mike Anscombe. Do you remember Mike Anscombe? I think he's passed away. There was quite a bit of Mike and that authoritative kind of thing, and worked on the voice, worked on the attitude, worked on the look and the earnestness of it all.
How's that affected your life? Like people think of you as Jim Walcott.
It's just the hair.
It's just the hair.
It's just if I comb my hair differently, it's totally different.
Like if it comes down, no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So basically, your character was based on your hair being up.
Yeah.
Have you had ridiculous fan encounters who believe that you're Jim Walcott, or somebody not quite as bright as you are?
Well, I mean, the people that watch the Red Green Show were absolutely rabid about that. And when we got into that position,
Ranger Gord
was a very lonely, again, not very enlightened man living in a fire tower for decades. And they stopped paying him many years earlier, but he kept working out of a sense of duty.
Yeah.
And but really had all the best intentions in the world to make it better. So he would try to come up with a sprinkler system for forests that would save the forests, and he tried to tag black flies and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But in the States, when we went down, we did a lot of junkets for PBS, and we'd go down to various little affiliates, and especially Des Moines. For some reason, Des Moines was a huge one for Red Green. And we'd be mobbed at the airport because people, if you were on the box, the TV set, you could be from Hollywood or you could be from anywhere, but it didn't matter. It was all
you're in their home.
You're in the box. You're in their home.
Yeah.
So we were incredibly popular down there, and this really. You want me to tell a horrible story about people taking it too seriously?
Okay. Oh yeah.
So we went to this place, and I think it was Des Moines, and there was a situation where there was a lot of Q&A involved after the PBS fundraising thing. Right, we'd be on air for an hour or two doing some fundraising, and then we came into a hallway which was a gymnasium, and people were lined up around the entire gymnasium waiting to see us, and with a lot of kids, a lot of younger kids. Because they were huge fans. It's one of those shows that you could watch.
Family
with the whole
friendly.
Family, yeah, exactly. And big in Saudi Arabia because there was no women in it. It's amazing. Yeah.
And certainly no women driving.
Exactly. So anyway, we were handed questions. It was me and Winston Rothschild and Mike Hammer and a bunch of other these characters, and we were given questions, and the questions would be anything, And one of my questions in the middle of the pilot I had was, Ranger Gord, if you've had half your brain removed, can you still be a forest ranger? And my answer was something funny, like, well, you have to have half your brain removed to be a forest ranger.
Oh, dear.
And we go on. You see what's coming.
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm. So sitting at the autograph table now, and you could sign an autograph, and you could have a picture taken with them for a Polaroid at the time, and the money would go to the PBS station. for $5 or whatever it was. So I'm signing away, and then over my shoulder, over my the side of my eye, I could see this woman and a smaller child, and she said something like, Ranger Gord, this is my son Ryan, and Ryan did have half of his brain removed, and he really does want to be a forest ranger. So I slowly look up, and she's turned the child around, and there's a pencil-sized scar up the nape of his neck. Oh. And I couldn't die. You know, I didn't have a pacemaker to turn off or anything. I couldn't yell fire. There was nothing I could do. So I just looked at him and just dug and dug and dug, and I said, you know, and he was a very lucid young man, and I said, well, you seem like a very bright young guy. I'm sure, I'm sure you'll have a very, very good future in the forest industry. And I was just kidding back there, and oh my God, it was one of those things. So, yeah, and in cases like that where young people are involved, a lot of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I suppose when you that show, the Newsroom, was so I don't know what the word is, but it was such a moment in Canadian television history at the time. People either loved it, people either resented it because there was tax dollars going into it. There was always controversy around it, and no matter what, we came out of it with some sort of
controversy.
Yeah, well, not only controversy, but like a pivotal moment in Canadian television where there was, it seemed to break through a little bit more than it had in the past with, forgive me, Wayne and Schuster or whatever it was. It was a different level. We seem to have taken a little bit of a step. Yeah. Ken did,
certainly, and he was given rein to do so.
Yes, and very, very smartly. But, he had a producer who, they were playing good cop, bad cop.
Peter Mayboom.
Peter Mayboom would be the good cop, and he would make it look like it was the network's idea that this happened, and it was actually Ken's idea.
Sure.
Very smart way of going about it. So after that, it's very easy to get pigeonholed in whatever you do. I mean, whoever, think of somebody who, Adam West or
well,
God, who was
Ed
the guy?
Asner.
Ed Asner, who was the guy that played Breaking Bad.
But he's done a lot of things.
He's done a lot of things, but I'm sure they wanted to see him in that thing again because it was so. It became a moment in time in their own world, in their own lives, that they wanted to see again, and it became a very comfortable thing. And it is a comfortable thing to sit back and just keep doing that.
And Ranger Gord was after Jim Walcott or before?
It was kind of consecutive.
Consecutive, right. You did 96 episodes of the Red Green Show. 96, according to IMDb.
Yeah. I'm trying to think because I think it was 16 seasons. I think it was more than 96.
Wow, really?
I think so.
And now you were on the set with some of the funniest people in Canada.
Yeah.
What was that set like?
Are you talking about Red Green Show?
Red Green Show, yeah.
Well, the thing is with Ranger Gord that I was always alone.
Oh.
Right? So it was only ever me and Steve. But every once in a while we would do the questions, secret word or hidden word or whatever it was. So I would show up on set, miraculously being a forest ranger. But anyway, all that aside, it was usually 9 times out of 10 it was just me and Steve. And at the very beginning, one of the very first shows, we were in a kid's treehouse that they had found somewhere in Hamilton. And literally the thing would be swaying and creaking, and there would be me and Steve, and nobody else was allowed up except the cameraman, who had to stand on the ladder because if he came into the room, we'd probably all be gone now. And then it became a treehouse, a tower at a defunct casino in Port Carling somewhere.
What?
Yeah, that we didn't have permission to use, but it was abandoned.
Yeah.
And so we'd just traipse up there, and we'd stay at Cleveland's house, and we'd shoot for a couple of days, and it was always just me and Steve and props and camera people and lights, and that was it.
Yeah.
But so with everybody else, it was never a communal activity, except obviously backstage when we went into the CBC studio, and everyone else was there in the show, and I was shooting the tower in the studio. So we were together, but we were rarely together on stage alone. Steve is a particularly funny guy.
Yeah.
A genuinely very, very funny. The very first time I met him was a show I did before Red Green, which was the Comedy Mill.
Right. Smith and Smith.
Smith and Smith's Comedy Mill. and they came around to various agencies, and they wanted to audition people to become part of this little troupe. So at Noble Kaplan, my agent, they came in and they gave us a piece of dialogue to prepare for the audition. And there was some line about cheese being a binding agent, and I stuck a Cheese Whiz label on the backside of a bear that I held on my knee and not mention until I say, well, why is cheese so binding? And I would hold the bear up with the Cheese Whiz sticker on his behind. And Steve loved that, absolutely loved it. But the thing was, I was sitting on this chair in this audition that was particularly rickety. Like I could feel it like move around a lot, and I wasn't quite sure if this thing was going to hold up. And sure enough, we're sitting there at the end of the audition, and I lean back, and the whole thing goes down, and I'm ass over head, my legs are in the air, and I'm horribly embarrassed. It's years ago when I was 20 something. And I got up and I said, "Oh my God!" And they were concerned that I'd hurt myself. I said, "No, I'm fine. I have nothing hurt but my ego." And he said, "No, don't worry about it. You took it a lot better than the last guy." I thought, yeah, I want to work with you. Great comment.
And many, many episodes later, it's now history. So you also did a significant number of episodes playing Alan Roy in Made in Canada or the industry, depending on where you're watching it. So what was that like, working with Rick Mercer and Leah Pinsent? And what was that? That must have been a very funny...
You know what happened with me and Leah
No,
Pinsent?
no, tell me what happened. Is that where you met?
You are evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were both married to other people. And the first year was, hi. The second year was, oh, hi again. And the third year was, hi. And the fourth year was, come here. Anyway.
Have you told that story before?
Not in those words, but the kind of thing. So it was shameful. But anyways, it all worked out. We've been together now for 19 years. I think Made in Canada ended 15 years ago now, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
And did you have a relationship with Gordon Pinsent before that?
Just absolutely very superficially. I revered him as Sergeant Scott on the Forest Rangers and everything else that I knew him in and from, and. So, he's always been the icon that he is, so that when we eventually did together, there was a lunch with Mom and Dad, and I was a puddle in a chair.
Oh, man.
Hi. Yeah, we're getting together. Yeah, no, we're both married. Yeah, it's okay. But they were very sweet, and the Mom, especially Charmian King, was particularly understanding about the whole thing. And it was I'm joking about it now, but it was a very, very uncomfortable thing.
I'm sure
it was not pleasant,
but
for years.
And was he open to you as a performer, as a son-in-law?
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. I mean, we're as thick as thieves now, for sure. We're very, very tight now. But at the beginning, he comes from the place where he knows from which these relationships can start. He knows from which it's all about momentary passion and closeness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he wasn't, like all of us, I'm sure, not absolutely convinced that this was the right thing. Were we just being goofy and having a pre-midlife crisis or whatever it was? But as the years went on, I think if I had to do it again, I would do it again, but I'd do it differently. But he and she and Charm, who passed away, I mean, really embraced me, which was really lovely. And they got it. We all eventually got it. And they said, "Oh, I see. That's what that's about."
And do you get advice from him?
I wish I could remember his exact words, but a couple of years ago I was offered my very first romantic lead in a film called Into Invisible Light with Jennifer Dale, and I was petrified of it. I had to learn how to tango. I had never played a completely straight romantic lead. And I told him, and he sort of ruminated on it for a few days, and then we were sitting on the back deck one summer evening, and he started telling me some really smart things about how it's all done and
how romantic leads are done.
Well, lack of a better word, how to act.
Because before that, you'd just been,
Because I've just been pretending to act.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Because you did a really good job, by the way.
Thanks. Yes. Well, yeah. Well, like I said, if you believed it for a few seconds, then I'm in good shape. But yeah, no, just basically telling me how to let everything superficially around me go. There's nothing but the moment happening, and speak my truth. Speak my truth in any situation, which I think I've always done because I always had to make whatever I was doing a reality in my own mind. And if it's a reality in my mind, then it's going to be a reality to the people watching, hopefully.
Yeah, and even if it's Jim Walcott or Ranger Gord or whatever it is, even if the character seems to be way out on left field, you're going to play him truthfully.
It's the kind of thing, and I'm convinced about this the longer I've been in the business, that there's an unspoken sort of ethereal mist that goes along when things start to bump along, when you're really listening to somebody, when you're really doing nothing but responding as opposed to coming up with any kind of opposing action or a thing or an artificial imposition that you put on a character that you wish them to have, that there's a humming that goes on, and a 5-page scene could feel like mere seconds, and then you think that, you should go, and you can turn somersaults when you're in the middle of it because you're doing it exactly right. Mm-hmm. And those moments, which I'm sure are magic and are not that common, but they, I think, become a little bit more common as you calm down a little bit when you do what you do. You come up with certain tricks. I have a trick to learn lines so that I can hear the other line. I have a recorder like this one in front of us here, and I put everybody else's lines with a gap from mine, and then I walk around with that, and I can do other things so I know what the line sounds like. I know what I'm thinking I'm going to react, and then I try to forget the whole thing when I walk on set, and I've forgotten. Oh, you're saying what? And then So there's that. There's I do another thing where I say, please don't make a big deal out of this, but I'd rather not know if the camera is far away, if it's tight on me. A lot of people can work with that, and it's just my process that I'm going to do it whatever way I'm going to do it all the time.
Close up,
whatever it is, not on me, behind me, side beside me. If it's on somebody else in my shot, fine. But I just don't want to know.
That's very generous.
Well, it's just the way I work because I like anything else, you can become self-conscious if the camera is uber tight on me that I'm not going to be listening anymore, and that's a very dangerous trap to be in.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you were talking about that playing a romantic lead, because in that Star article back when it was when you were getting the ACTRA Award of Excellence that year, 2009, you were quoted as saying, "I want to get out of playing a stupid asshole. A romantic lead or something would be nice."
That would be good.
And then here you go. It only took you 10 years, but starring with Jennifer Dale. So. These little nuggets that you're giving us, they're very, very important. The idea of recording your voice, recording the other line, and leaving a pause for you. These are helpful for any actor who might be listening to it, and also for somebody who's not an actor who would be going, "Oh, that's how they do it." That's really very important. And I think it was Groucho Marx who said the most important thing in acting is honesty. If you can fake that, you've got it made. I think it was Groucho Marx.
That sounds pretty good.
Or George Burns.
Yeah.
So I did mention the ACTRA Award of Excellence, and which is given to a performer from ACTRA Toronto who has not only established a career generally internationally, but also has given back to the union. And you have done something very significant that no other actor has done. And, some people break the bank. You bring the bank to the union. So you were very instrumental in creating the credit union and here at ACTRA Toronto. Can you talk about the origins of that, how that happened?
Being self-employed in this country, being self-employed in any country is not a good situation when it comes to lending money, borrowing money, managing your financial affairs. Actors, generally speaking, don't like dealing with money, whether they make $1 gazillion or $5. It's always something that is outside the wheelhouse. In fact, when I was growing up and originally wanting to be an airline pilot, math was a mystery to me, and I'd try to make it up in summer school, and I'd fail summer school, so I'd have to figure it all out. Anyways, after figuring it all out, and I became an actor, and I started doing fairly well, and back in the 80s, it was possible for a 20-something to buy a house, and I did in Etobicoke, and my father co-signed for the mortgage, and then moved to LA, and then came back and got another house, and my father has to sign for it again. So, I'd go to the bank manager and show a pretty good tax return, and then he'd say, well, what's the guarantee that you're going to be employed next year? And I looked at him and said, what's the guarantee you're going to be employed next year?
Did he like that?
No, that was the end of the conversation.
No. Sure.
So I started to, when I was in Los Angeles, there was something called the AFTRA Federal Credit Union, and it was immensely useful for performers, not only because it was geared toward the acting community that, as I say, do not generally like to deal with financial situations, financial matters, or talk about how to manage funds properly. And it doesn't necessarily happen in any kind of profound way. It just happens in little minuscule ways. We went down a couple of years ago to talk to some of these people because they are our prototype. They've been around for decades. And so they'd have little ways of telling you, you should put this away before you're 60 years old, and you should start this, and because being self-employed, A, being an actor, B, it's a very temperamental, precarious situation, and you are the manager of your own destiny to a great extent, much more so than somebody that works for Pratt & Whitney Aircraft that has a pension and everything else. You have to make your own pension. You have to determine how that's going to all work out. So with this credit union, there was a certain amount of education involved with being a member and them enlightening you on how this all works. And they'd also be able to vet loans in a way that a bank wouldn't necessarily understand. They would do some kind of income averaging, et cetera, et cetera. So with all of this, that I came back and I mentioned to Carl Pruner, who was president at the time, and Brian Topp, who was executive director of ACTRA. I said, why can't we have something like this? And I just kept harassing them and saying, this has got to happen. Brian actually came from a credit union background. He understood what it was all about. And so, to be honest, they did a lot of the heavy lifting in this thing. I do give them credit for that. I was the instigator, I suppose. I was the one that was pushing and pushing and pushing and abdicating and maintain a position as co-chair, I don't know how many years later, on the board.
And you had to study in order to be on this board too, didn't
you?
You had to
yeah.
pass.
No, there's a pretty intensive. They want the credit union system in Canada wants people from diverse backgrounds to be on boards, but they also want you to be enlightened as to how everything works. They want you to be able to read a spreadsheet. They want you to be able to understand everything from sexual harassment to security in the workplace to reporting to suspicious transactions. You have to know about a lot. So there's voluminous amount of hours put into training board members. So the thing got started, and it got started in a very precarious time because interest rates are historically at a low, and they have been since we started, which made it incredibly difficult to come up with a positive, a big return on our money because we were lending money out at very low rates, which CIBC and Scotiabank can do with impunity because their quarterly profits are in the billions. I think our assets are now up to $25 million, but we are still dedicated very, very much to serving the interests of the creative arts in this country. And you and I both know that it's exploding now, that there's studios being built everywhere. We've become a huge service industry. We've become very prolific in creating our own content. So there's an awful lot of people out there that can use our services. The other part of the equation, too, is that of any province in Canada, Ontario has the lowest penetration of credit unions. People in this province just don't understand it. They understand it a great deal. It's 60% or 70% of the business in Quebec, similar in BC, but very few people understand it here. And when we have 25 cents to promote ourselves, for people to understand what a credit union is, and to tell them that, you're my fellow actor, and you're going to be holding my money, and you're going to be knowing about my financial business, and trying to talk them out of that, and trying to talk them out of the fact that we're every bit as regulated and insured as any bank or any financial institution in the country. It's been a slog, and so it's been a number of years now that we've been taking the slow and steady approach to making this thing work, and we're still very determined to make it work. And we have an incredibly dedicated board with a retired Bay Street lawyer and money managers, and Carl Pruner's still involved, Brian Topp is still involved, and Sue Milling. We've got terrific people involved.
And ultimately,
Karen Ritson.
For actors or stunt performers or
anybody that makes their living in the creative arts,
right.
and so you can be a painter, and
right.
you could be a painter's spouse,
right.
Same sex or otherwise, or a child, or whatever it is. Anybody can join.
Right, and you walk into the credit union, and the first thing when you tell them what you are in the industry, the first thing is not "No, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
It's yes, we understand you.
Yes, we understand you, and we're going to make it work. Now, at the same time, we can't lend money with impunity, because it's your money, and it's your money, and it's my money, and
right.
We have to come up with a lot of the same sort of, lack of a better word, rules for lending out money, because it's everybody's money. We're not going to just throw money at people without any kind of fiscal responsibility. So we do have ways of vetting it, but we have ways of vetting people in a better way for self-employed people than any bank.
Great. So don't hesitate walking in if you are an artist, because we're going to listen to you.
Exactly.
Right.
And whether you make $25 million or $25 a year in the business, it is what it is.
I'm closer to the $25,
yeah,
but I just wanted to say just a little full disclosure. I was on the Newsroom with you for the first season there. I had a couple of episodes where I played the entertainment reporter and aerobics instructor of
I don't
Newsroom.
remember the aerobics instructor.
Yeah. So I do have a little history with Jim Walcott. So you are so much more than just a vacuous anchor, Peter Keleghan. You're
thank you.
A national
Thank you for
treasure
noticing.
chest.
Would you call my wife?
I will call your
Thank
wife,
you.
and I'll tell her that you're having a good hair day.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, apparently it's all about the hair and being a tremendous actor. Thanks for listening. I'm David Gale. ACTRA Spotlight is produced by Kaz Enright and recorded in ACTRA Toronto's Gordon Pinson studio. You can get Spotlight on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. There's lots of places to do that. Don't forget to like us and share us, and keep watching Canadian. Till next time.